Welcome back, everyone. Oz here, and today I've got some r/malicious compliance for you all. As per usual, I'll be reading you the post, giving you my opinions, and I hope you do the same down in the comments below. And without further ado, let's jump right into it. Stem Cella. Access removed? Here's all my work. I work in a role where I own a portion of the software. I don't work in IT, but I do system configuration for the portion I manage. I had admin access until one day, IT removed it. Without warning and without notice. They claimed risk and board decisions. Of course, I could rampage and get my access back because it saves the company a significant amount of money each year, as we don't need to use external contractors. There's also no one else in the company that knows my part of the system or how to create business rules, scripting and coding for this particular system. Well, people know JavaScript, they would need to become familiar with the system, which will take time. Instead, fine, sends a list of all the things they now need to take over so the work still gets done. Noted there can be no delays in turnaround time despite there being an extra step. Noted that I will still need to approve every change in configuration. The list totaled to approximately 30 hours per week. It also requires 6 a.m. starts at points throughout the month. I made sure to also confirm they would be required to come with me for all meetings regarding the system or data because I won't be repeating myself or duplicating my effort. Within 30 minutes, the decision was reversed, and I had my access back. I don't think that'll be changing back anytime soon. Not when we work under separate budgets and their team always cry time and cost poor. See, I used to work with systems architects and developers who would work on back-end APIs, and oftentimes they would just flat out admit to me like, yeah, I built this in a way where if I'm ever fired, then the company's screwed because no one would be able to decipher or deal with my systems because I built them for me. So if you're at a company and you want to maintain your job security, find ways to establish systems to put them into place where, it'll be really damn difficult to replace you or to circumvent your workload. In my opinion, there is absolutely nothing wrong with putting yourself first in a corporate environment and making sure that you have job security. As long as, of course, you're not screwing over the people around you. In OP's case, IT tried to screw them over, and they found out, oh shit, yeah, we don't want to take this on. Oh my god. Take this back from us now. Also, I do kind of wonder how much of a lie it was when IT said that there was risk and board decisions involved when it took less than 30 minutes for that to be reversed. Because that was a pretty quick board meeting for them to have and make that adjustment within 30 minutes of finding out how much workload OP was actually taking on. Interesting, right? Mother Soraka. Manager said, no phone during work hours, period. So I stopped answering his calls. I work IT support for a medium-sized company. We've always been allowed to have our phones at our desks. Sometimes family emergencies happen, doctors call back, whatever. As long as we weren't scrolling social media all day, nobody cared. New manager comes in last month, sees one person checking a text, and loses it. Sends out an email, effective immediately. No personal phones during work hours. They must be left in your car or locker. This means 9 to 5, no exceptions. Anyone caught with a phone will be written up. Okay, sure, boss. The thing is, our manager works from home 3 days a week, and when server issues pop up after hours or on weekends, guess how he contacts us? That's right, our personal phones. We don't have company phones. Friday afternoon, 4:45 p.m. Major server issue. I see it. Could fix it in 10 minutes, but my phone is in my car, as per policy. I calmly finish my work at 5 o'clock and walk out. By the time I get to my car and check my phone at 5:15, I have 17 missed calls and a string of increasingly panicked texts from my manager. The server has been down for 30 minutes. Multiple departments can't do anything. I call him back, hey, just got to my car and saw your calls. What's up? He's furious, mauling and seething, asking why I didn't answer. I remind him about the no phones policy. He says that's different. This was an emergency. I point out his email said, no exceptions, and I was just following policy to avoid a write-up. Monday morning, new email. Personal phones are permitted at desks for emergency purposes. Back to normal then. Gotta love a new manager coming in, telling everyone to leave their phones in the car, and then, oh, shocked Pikachu face when no one's able to answer their phone because you had them put their phones in their fucking car. I don't know what you were expecting, but it couldn't have been anything other than this. Like what, did you just think that because like they're your employees, they would have some kind of sixth sense attached to their minds where, oh my gosh, my boss is calling me, I should go get my phone from my car. Like, what is it with new managers just enacting new policies? Seriously. Dodo Head 974. Florida HOA nightmare. Oh, certified mail for all communication? You got it. Posting this now because I no longer live in the house or neighborhood, but at the time I lived in a lovely cookie-cutter neighborhood with an HOA. This was one of those neighborhoods where they finished like 100 homes in the span of a few weeks. And it was common to see 8 or 10 moving trucks on any given weekend. The neighborhood went from ghost town to filled in literally a month. In Florida, most HOAs are required to use certified mail when notifying homeowners of violations. My HOA took this a step further, that all notifications to the board would be through certified mail. Received a violation? Response in certified mail. Requesting a hearing? Certified mail. Want the bylaws? Certified mail. Now, this last one might strike you as odd, because how would you know to request the bylaws by certified mail if you didn't have the bylaws already, you might ask? Let's put a pin in that one for now, because upon moving in, they were kind enough to provide the covenants, conditions, and restrictions outlining what we could and could not do. But not the bylaws that told us how to handle violations and complaints. So, I move in, and everything is great. At first. That is until about the 3rd month when there's a big packet taped to my door. A notice of intent to lien. The packet explains that I was delinquent on a number of violations, many of them repetitive. On the list are things like not keeping the garbage cans out of sight. We kept them on the side of the house like most neighbors. Standing water in between the sides of the homes, grading issues I was fighting with the developer over. Parking one of the vehicles in the driveway, but over the sidewalk line. Bushes not trimmed appropriately. Unapproved modifications to the doorway, installing a Ring doorbell camera. The list went on, but totaled $4,032.12 for violations, late fees, and legal fees. I immediately emailed requesting more information, and didn't get a response. I do this for a few days before threatening legal action in an admittedly hostile email, to which I finally get a response indicating that all communications regarding violations will only be addressed via communication methods approved in the bylaws. I request a copy of the bylaws. All requests for the bylaws must be submitted via approved communication methods, as per the bylaws. At this point, I'm about to go postal. But if Edmond Dantes could wait 14 years for revenge, I could take a breath and figure this out. The notice gave me 45 days, and it had only been a couple days. I had time to figure this out. Little known fact about developers and HOAs in Florida. The developer is the one that drafts the initial covenants, conditions, and restrictions, bylaws, and legal documents, then hands it off to the board. My developer, whose name starts with D and ends with a word that sounds like Schmorton, was already on my shit list for a number of issues, including the improper grading. When I emailed my contacts requesting a copy of the bylaws, I don't think they wanted to add to the growing list of shit I was vehemently emailing them about already, and I had a copy within minutes. That's when I found the certified mail language. Now, the wheels were turning, because it stated all communication was to be by certified mail. Each violation was to be filed separately and delivered by certified mail. Each notice of failure to cure and the late fee, certified mail. Everything. I had 8 unique violations plus repeat violations over a period of 9 weeks. At minimum, I should have received like 22 notices via certified mail at around $7 a pop. So cue the malicious compliance. My revenge, malicious compliance, was two-pronged. My morality has developed to a fashion that If you want to wrongfully take from me, I'm willing to spend just as much as you want to fight you. They wanted 4K from me. I was willing to spend a good amount of that just to fuck with them. I took off 2 days from work and prepared a little game of fuck around and find out. So step 1 was to draft a single page, no personal details, but explaining my situation and warning any neighbors going through something similar what the bylaws indicated and that all homeowners should immediately request a copy of the bylaws via certified mail. I provided the board address, the language to include, which stipulated that the response from the board, even if it was a copy of the bylaws, was to be by certified mail, meaning a printed copy of the bylaws, which was 29 pages. I also encouraged anyone fighting infractions or having received a notice of intent to lien what to do. I printed about 150 copies because that's how many houses were in the neighborhood. Roped in a few close neighbors, and we stuck a notice on about every door. Step 2 was to fight each violation individually. I drafted a template language indicating that I was refuting each violation, some more boilerplate language on why I was refuting it, and the coup de grace, a final addendum, formally requesting copies of the receipt of delivery for each notice having been delivered via certified mail, as per the bylaws. I customized each one specific to the violation, and copied in any specific language from the covenants, conditions, and restrictions that proved I was not in violation, and sent 23 certified letters, 22 for violations, and an extra one that was a notice of contest for the lien. Here's another little tidbit about Florida law. HOAs operate under something called rebutable presumption, meaning any request for official records had to be responded to within 10 business days. I sent the letters on a Thursday, and each letter included a request for official records, a copy of the record of delivery. They had 2 weeks. About a week and a half later, I got a very strongly worded email basically saying all of the violations were valid, and that I had another 25 days to comply or they would pursue the lien. I responded tersely, all communications regarding violations must be done in approved communication methods as per Article 9, communication methods as per the bylaws. They had a few days to draft a response and include the records I requested, and mail them to me, certified, and individually, as per the bylaws, they never did. So I sent 23 more follow-ups indicating they had violated the Florida Homeowners Association Act, breach of the bylaws, and intended to pursue legal action if they did not cease and desist. I wish I could tell you I know what happened to them during that time frame or what it was like for them, but we heard from a man married to one of the board members that something like 100 of the homes requested a copy of the bylaws via certified mail, on top of the fact that they had active liens on several homes for violations, as well as 20 more homes that had issued a notice of intent to lien. Everyone was now fighting them via certified fucking mail. In the end, the HOA had a change of members that resulted from the legal fees and expenses incurred by having to respond to each violation via certified mail, drying up the reserve. Turns out that the board hadn't sent a single notice of violation via certified mail, and in most cases, had never notified the homeowners at all, and assumed the threat of a lien would just get them to pay whatever fines there were. Why were they doing this, you might ask? Simple. There was an undeveloped lot of land at the front of the neighborhood facing a main road, in front of the homes of the first people to move into the neighborhood. Coincidentally, where most of the board lived. The developer had held onto the plot and was intending to sell it to a commercial developer, but had offered to sell it to the neighborhood at a premium. Those scumbags didn't want a gas station going up in front of their homes, and were racking up violation fees from their fucking neighbors to afford the purchase through the HOA. The lien on my home never materialized, and while I never admitted it was me, word must have gotten around because within 2 weeks, the developer, who had been dragging their feet for months on my complaints, did everything. My entire house was regraded on both sides, with French drains put in for added measure. The sides were completely resodded, and everything else taken care of. I only stayed there for like 8 months total before an offer came in that made me give the finger to short-term capital gains and Peace out. All in all, I sent 46 certified letters. I think I spent like $350 and 2 days of paid time off. Best money I ever fucking spent. Part of me believes that the HOA thought they could get away with the certified mail situation specifically so that way they could avoid this exact scenario of having people contesting their liens. So they could get away with it and people would just have to deal with it. I don't know how this would look in front of a judge, but my guess would be is that they were just hoping people would just submit the lien, pay it, and then not contest it or anything along those lines at all. Using certified mail to essentially make communication as difficult as possible to where the people who have the money to pay would just simply fold over, pay it. They probably thought by hiding the bylaws behind certified mail with no way to give anyone actual access to it without, their approved forms of communication, they probably just assumed that they were the ones who would be able to fully abuse the certified mail system and not have it turned against them so goddamn quickly by almost every homeowner in the neighborhood. Phenomenal work on OP's part for turning their bylaws against them and making their existence a living hell to the point where they even broke down and just resorted to emailing OP instead of following their own covenants and conditions. Little bit of a post-eyes tinfoil hat theory insert here. So the developer was planning on selling the HOA the land at a premium, right? HOA was using fines to pay for the land that the developer was selling them. Developer was dragging their feet on fixing things around the neighborhood that just so happened to coincidentally also be things the HOA could fine OP for, or anyone else for that matter. So that makes me wonder what the chances are that the developer was purposely dragging their feet so that way the HOA could get the fine, so that way the HOA could then buy the land at a premium, and the developer gets away with selling, potentially, a regular piece of land for a way above market value. Over Easy Alley. Boss looked like a fool, courtesy of me. I worked as a recruiter for a temp agency when I was young and fresh out of college. The manager of the agency was a total micromanager and wanted to say in absolutely everything. She micromanaged everyone so badly that she wanted to proofread any emails that any staff member was sending externally. She also wanted to be CC'd on every single outgoing external email. One day, one of my coworkers got a response back from an employer who gave some positive feedback about the email she wrote. Our manager made sure to reply all and take credit for the email and explain she oversees all outgoing emails. A few days later in a staff meeting, she made a point of saying she should get credit for any feedback the agency receives since she proofreads everything. The thing is, this manager was not well-spoken or smart, and not even a particularly good writer. I regularly spotted issues with her sentence structure and use of commas, but just didn't say anything. One day, she's proofreading one of my emails that would be going externally to an employer who pumped a lot of money into our agency. I was stating in the email that I thought so-and-so was a great fit for their vacant position based on so-and-so's past experience. Miss Manager comes to my desk and tells me the email looks good, except it should read past experience. P-A-S-S-E-D. I told her that was incorrect, and she told me I was wrong, and she knows the difference between the two words. I wasn't in the mood to argue, so I wrote it as past experience, as she wanted, and CC'd Miss Manager on the email. The employer writes me back and says, as an employer who hires people to work on printed literature, they wanted to correct me and let me know it's actually past experience. P-A-S-T. That's where malicious compliance kicked in. I hit reply all and thanked them for the feedback and explained my manager values all feedback. And since she proofreads all outgoing emails, she was the one who insisted on writing past experience. The next day, she announced she no longer wanted to proofread outgoing external emails and didn't want to be CC'd on them any further. Malicious compliance put that witch in her place. I do hope that at some point she'll be able to get past her past experience and maybe perhaps by a passing glance at her past behavior, she'll realize she passed up quite the opportunity by not giving her employees benefit of the doubt past their education and instead choosing to micromanage them past every single moment. But thankfully, at a passing glance, it seems that this behavior is well in the past. And now hopefully the employees can now passively pursue their work so that one day this whole memory will become a past experience, employer and all. Paper and Doodles Co. Management said we had to work 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So we did, and let them deal with explaining to our California clients why we weren't available. So this happened a while ago before remote work was even a concept. Think, 2008-ish. I was working at a large media agency, and for anyone who knows agency work, we typically work around our client's schedule, or at least as best as possible. We were based in New York City, but had California clients. So it was pretty standard that we get in at 10 a.m. and leave around 7 to 8 p.m. If you stayed to 9 p.m., you could take a car service home, so we sometimes just did that. Most of us were in our 20s, so no big deal. When a new CEO started, he was used to working in Europe and hated that we weren't in the office at 8 a.m., enforced a company policy that we had to be in the office from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. We, of course, followed the rules because who wouldn't want to leave at 5? Let's just say the policy was lifted within 2 weeks when our West Coast clients couldn't get in touch with us. I guess, gotta love the CEO mentality of the moment I step in, I gotta shake things up to prove that I mean business. Only to then, start knocking out the structural supports of the entire company, and then when things start collapsing, realizing, that was done like that for a reason. I always find it goofy that it's extremely common to hear of CEOs just coming in and shaking things up, expecting their way to work miraculously better, and not asking any questions as to, hey, how come you guys do it this way when I'm used to things being done this way? But that would be an admission of incompetence from the CEO. So therefore, they can't ask why things are done one way. They have to be ready to get their movers and shakers in place and really just shake up the game a little bit. Let people know they mean business, even if it means completely fucking over half your clientele. Now deleted user, which makes me wonder if maybe their malicious compliance backfired in the legal sense. Neighbor tried to weaponize town code enforcement. It backfired. My backyard neighbor has been difficult since the day I moved in. We closed on the house in late December, and by early spring, she was demanding I spend $10,000 to build a dry well to stop rainwater from flowing into her yard. My property sits higher than hers, and it's been this way for over 60 years. I refused, but offered to let her pay for it herself. She declined. A few weeks later, she called the town to complain about a floodlight on my property that was missing a cover. Code enforcement came by while we had people over, which made the whole situation embarrassing. The officer just told us she's known for this and not to worry. Just correct the issue, no fines were issued. A week later, the inspector returned to re-inspect the light. We had a nice chat, everything was in order, and the case was closed. On Father's Day, we held a small surprise party for my father-in-law's 80th birthday and played music on a small Sonos speaker. The following Friday, the same code enforcement officer came to me to say my neighbor had complained again. He told me not to worry, but reminded me that if I ever held a party with music and I wanted to avoid drama, I should apply for a permit. To host a party in your own home? That's fucked. In mid-July, I overheard my neighbor on the phone inviting people to a barbecue, giving the date and time. The following Monday, I went to town hall, applied for a permit for that exact date and time, and it was approved. On the day of her party, as her guests arrived, I turned on loud Old Greek chanting music from the early 1900s. My grandparents loved it and used to torture me and my cousins with it growing up. So I knew exactly how annoying it would sound blasting across the yard. Within minutes, she ran over, banging on my door and ringing my doorbell repeatedly. The Ring doorbell footage of her tantrum is hilarious. I did not answer since I had taken out my wife and my neighbors to the left and right of my house for drinks. The next Monday, code enforcement received a complaint. The same officer handled it personally and informed her that a permit had been issued and nothing could be done. I hope the code enforcement guy had a good time telling someone who had been filing just loads of bogus complaints on their neighbors that no, they're actually in check this time. They have a permit. And just the reaction they would have gotten. I would have loved to be a fly on the wall for that. Also, if I was in OP's shoes, I would take the time to begin documenting everything as much as possible. just in case if something ends up happening and it escalates to a point where that's needed, it would just be good to have, because a neighbor like this probably isn't going to stop, and they're actually going to get angry that their own ways are being used against them, and find new ways to pick and poke at OP and become just even more of a crazed nuisance. If they're willing to write you up for a floodlight code violation, who knows what other shit they're gonna pull. So be careful. Bing bong, am I wrong? If a single radio's battery dies, shut it all down. This happened over 5 years ago, and it still ticks me off whenever I think about it. Also, sorry about how long this is, lol. I was 17, working at a big theme park, and had been working there for the better part of the year. I had quickly picked things up, and was usually regarded as the responsible one on the team when it was just a bunch of us teens working a ride. We had a college student intern lead who was not good at leading or training new hires. We'll call him M. At my main ride, it required 3 people minimum to operate, 1 person in the control booth, 1 at the entrance gate, and 1 at the exit. However, we could have 4 or 5 if we were incredibly busy to help deal with the line. The people in the booth and at the entrance could not see the person at the exit directly, so we used radios. The control booth also has a camera on the exit gate. From day 1 on the job, we were taught hand signals in case the radio dies for quick communication. These signals were universal across the entire park. That summer, 3 freshly certified kids, we had to take tests to prove we paid attention to training, started the ride with someone locked inside the fence, aka not in a seat. Twice it was another employee, once it was a guest, which was a huge deal. The thing with those incidents was that those in the control booth didn't notice their mistake until the others screamed at them to hit the E-stop. Those new hires were either retrained or moved to a simpler ride. Well, one incredibly busy day, there were 5 of us running things. Me, M, and 3 others. M had been called over to another ride, which normally wasn't an issue. About an hour later, someone was scheduled to go home, and M hadn't come back yet. I called the other ride and asked them to send him back. We could have run things with the 3 of us, but it was super busy and we really needed a 4th. A few minutes later, someone, not our lead, was sent over to take over. Weird, but not a big deal. Another hour or so went by. Someone else needed to go home. I called again, asking for M. Also, all the radio's batteries were dead/dying. Things had slowed down, so I, being the spare 4th person, took the radios to the office to get fresh batteries. This took less than 10 minutes, and in that time, the guys had switched to hand signals as we were trained. When I came back, our lead had once again sent over someone else to take his spot. At this point, I realized that M was probably just shooting the shit in the nice air-conditioned booth at the other ride. Now, the guy that got sent over to us was normally at a roller coaster and hadn't been at this ride in over a month. So I gave him a quick review and he took controls. I turned around for maybe 30 seconds when I hear yelling. I turn around and the ride was stopped maybe 3 feet off the ground with our entrance guy locked in the fence. The guy at controls saw what he did and hit the E-stop, something that the other screw-ups that summer did not think to do. We had to call upper management, and wouldn't you know, M came running over. This time the highest of the higher-ups came over as well. They pulled each of us aside and interrogated us, which was odd, then walked away and talked for like half an hour. They then fired the guy at the controls on the spot and came up with BS reasons to get the rest of us removed from running rides. They absolutely were only doing that to make an example of us. I tried to rip into M for shrinking his duties, but as an anxiety-ridden kid, it didn't hit very hard. I was mainly pissed off that they fired the poor guy who never should have been there in the first place. Remember, I took the already dead radios earlier? They tried to say I had removed communication devices from the ride area, which prevented them from letting controls know they were outside the gate. They were basically trying to pin the whole thing on me. Total bull, because this happened after I brought them back. I assume M threw me under the bus for being in charge while he wasn't there. Also, we had hand signals. I tried explaining that to them, but they didn't give a shit. I refused to sign the paperwork, which would be admitting fault, so this fight was stretched over multiple days. Plus, I was leaving for college in like 2 weeks and didn't want to spend my last days of summer cleaning bathrooms. They gave us a new rule. If a single radio was dying, we had to call a manager to fetch us a new battery, even if we had people to spare to go grab one instead. If a radio died, we had to close the ride. Managers roamed around the whole area and were responsible for so much. So if you called them and it wasn't urgent, it could take a long time for them to show up. The next day, my radio was dying. I called the manager. Half an hour goes by. I call again. My radio died. I shut the ride down. The people in the over an hour line got pissed. I explained to people that we had to close because of the radios. Naturally, they got even more pissed because of how stupid that was. Manager shows up minutes later. I took the battery from him with a smile on my face, and he left without saying a word. After many complaints, management was magically fine with us using hand signals again. I never signed that paperwork. I left for college, and funny enough, Em also went to the same college. I ran into him once. He just kinda nodded at me. I gave him a dirty look, and I never saw him again. The next summer, I was rehired by the park as a lead, and actually did my damn job. Too long didn't read. When I was working at a theme park, we had several incidents of someone at my ride starting it up, with people locked inside the gate. This happened again when I was there because our lead, who was at another ride, was sending over inexperienced people instead of coming back and helping us. Upper management fired the guy who should have never been there, and my lead tried to blame it on me and get me sent to janitorial duty. I fought them, and they made up a rule stating that if a single radio battery died, we had to close the ride until a manager brought us a new one. After I closed it down many times over the next few days and got tons of complaints, they were okay with us getting the batteries ourselves / using hand signals again. For context, by the way, the fenced-in area is an area where you can get essentially hit by the ride if you're not careful. That's why it's a big deal and requires an emergency stop, because it can be fatal. Good on OP for standing their ground and not letting this kind of shit slide. M 100% knew what they were doing by shifting blame and trying to essentially clear themselves of any blame and shift it onto others so that way they seem like the perfect manager in play and not the one who actually was responsible for the problems at hand. He presumably is the one who staffed the ride with inexperienced people, and then also punished the inexperienced people for not being experienced with the protocol for that ride, with them being fired. Also, not to mention, the fastest way to drive a point home to a manager or any kind of upper lead is by turning the crowd against them, by making the customers pissed because they can't do their job because the rules management put in place. Not sure if it was purposeful, but it was definitely a result of how OP handled the situation, and very quickly solved the problem at hand. So great work! Hey, welcome to the outro. Don't forget this whole thing is basically brought to you by GamerSupps. If you like caffeine, then I can't recommend GamerSupps enough. Use code Oz at checkout to support the channel. And I do actually use this product. It's replaced all other sources of caffeine for me because I feel good. It doesn't have any of that extra stuff that a pre-workout blend might have. It's with a couple of the extra things to make it so you don't crash as hard. It's good. I like it. Personally, if you really want a good flavor, try the Soda Pressing Pear or even the Dragon Fruit Punch. Those two are my personal favorites right now.